The Shaggy Dog was the top-grossing motion picture in 1959.
Oh, there's Walt Disney. We'd all just, oh, you know.
And I had never been the bad guy in a Disney thing. I was always the good guy.
The dog was seriously almost human.
Does he have to keep looking at me like that?
What if we had him allergic? And this guy, if a dog's even in the room, even though you can't see it, he knows it's there, he starts to itch.
Trying to describe my character that I played in The Shaggy Dog as both the human and the dog is a bit like describing life on the planet Pluto. It didn't happen and it isn't real. No one's ever been there and I don't know anything about Pluto.
The role I played was a character, Moochie was his name. He had been created on an earlier serial that I had done for the Mickey Mouse Club called Adventures in Dairyland. He normally was a bit mischievous, trying to help his brother. Either he was turning into a dog all the time, or he was trying to get a rocket not to go through the roof of the house, or he was, you know, in some type of a mess. And generally, Moochie was there as his younger brother, trying to help him get through whatever it was.
That's just what Pop said not to do.
I played the French girl, Francesca, and I had to have a little tutoring for French, although everybody tells me when they see that movie how well I spoke French, and I don't remember speaking that much French in it.
Chiffon. J'ai tant désir pour mon cher petit chou.
First of all, I wasn't the hero.
I was gonna say, you were the guy that turns into the dog.
Yeah, I was the
That's
bad
probably,
guy.
Yeah.
And I had never been the bad guy in a Disney thing. I was always the good guy, you know. I didn't get the girl.
Well, yeah,
in the
well, that's
thing.
right, because I was the
No,
girl
I
in that
didn't,
movie. That's right.
I didn't get either one of you.
That's right. That's right.
The sheepdog on Shaggy Dog was a Bratislavian sheepdog, and they're used to herd sheep.
The dog was seriously almost human. I mean, the dog was so smart. Sam was always, you know, he had his little stand-ins that didn't look quite like Sam.
Bill Keeler did many animal shows for Disney. Bill was an absolute wizard with animals, and he understood how they thought, and he trained the English sheepdog in this picture. He could get animals to do things that you thought, an animal can't do this. A dog can't climb up a ladder. A dog can't go out the window. A dog can't, you know, do this or do that or whatever. Or sit in a hot rod and turn the steering wheel in a hot rod, you know, as it's driving down the street. Bill would say, no, wait a minute. I've got a couple of days before we get to that sequence. Let me see if I can't get this dog to drive this hot rod. Let me. He would go off and he'd come back in a couple of days, and you'd stand there with your mouth wide open because you couldn't believe that he would get these animals to do this, you know?
The dog and I were fighting. Tommy Kirk and I were fighting, right? So the idea was I was to get under him, push him over me, pull him over me, and then keep him off balance. And then they would put in the growls and stuff, and it looked pretty good.
Ça suffit.
Get him off!
They had to totally drench me, and I just remember that I wake up and the dog is licking my face. And
I drove a hot rod a couple of times where I really knocked on it and you know, slid it around, made a U-turn, a sliding U-turn around the street, and I knew by that time you don't tell anybody but the cameraman, because they'll stop me from doing it and put a double on. I want to do it myself. When we do this shot, I'm gonna really knock on it, and I'm gonna get this thing sideways as I come around the corner and all of that stuff. And so it is me.
We were down in the basement of the house, and we were trying to get this thing out, but it had started to start up and take off, and it was rumbling. The whole place was just shaking. The special effects guys had rigged this whole dining room, living room complex so that everything was shaking. Coffee cups were shaking, the furniture was hopping around and stuff.
We have one of the great directors who went on to do Charles Barton, who went on to do, Leave It to Beaver. He was known as a good kids director. He was very good with children, famous for that. And I remember him he was a very kind, patient, never got excited, very gentle, beautiful person. I liked him a lot.
he was wonderful with animals. You have to really be patient to work with animals. He was wonderful with working with the young people. Oh, I remember doing one scene where I had to say the word chiffon, and I'll bet you I did 30 takes on that, trying to get chiffon just to say it right.
Chiffon.
I remember when I was on the Virginian having a director that literally had me in tears because I wasn't doing what, you know, and Mr. Barton would have never. I mean, he was so gentle and...
Can't say enough about Bill Walsh. He went on to write Mary Poppins, Absent-Minded Professor, Son of Flubber. These were huge hits.
Bill had come from the Midwest in Ohio, and he had a feel for everyman, just like Walt did. Walt had a great feel for that everyman person, that character. And America, he knew, would identify with it if we kept those people human, and if you kept them likable, and if you then gave them a situation that they had to resolve. In a scene at the police station, if I remember right, Fred McMurray asks the authorities to bring the son in to vouch for him, and the son has to turn on the father so that he can get out of the police station to go and save the day.
What did you say?
I said I don't know anything and I'd like to go home, please.
Oh, gee.
So it's not as simple as it appears when you really stop and analyze. How would you write this sequence where you have to have all of these things happen and people turn, and yet it's comedy to boot?
The makeup process on Shaggy Dog was very long, laborious, and hard. I had to have a plaster cast made of my face, which means you had to be covered with the stuff and you breathe through the straw. And then from my head, they built up the Lon Chaney thing, you know, with pieces of latex and hair, and they would gradually turn him into a dog.
A typical day for me was just, you know, getting there at like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, and boy, those were the days when you had to wear those awful rollers in your hair and sit under the dryer for, oh my gosh, for an hour. And
then you're on the set, bang. Everybody's there. You have run-through rehearsal. Then we got the rehearsal blocked, which means everybody's actions, their movements, what door you come in, and where you sit down, and planned. And they say, okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay, now second team. The first team, the 3 actors say, they leave the set and they can go do whatever they want. And they call second team, and the stand-ins come in and they light it. They light the scene. Now the lighting man comes in. If it's comedy, it's generally bright.
We had a big red trailer that was on the lot right outside the sound stages, and when we finished shooting a scene or whatever, we went out and we went to school. You had to go to school for 3 hours a day within your work day, but you had much more of a one-on-one relationship with your teacher.
I had a good teacher. I respect very much, and you better respect her. Her name was Mrs. Seaman, and she was pretty tough. She'd make us draw up charts with things to accomplish for the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Do this, book report, write a paper on this. And I never could do all the things she assigned. She assigned a lot, and I worked hard. And she was not above mentioning, you know, I can have your license pulled if you don't reach a certain standard.
You actually had to do what everybody else had to do, but you had 3 hours to do it in. And those 3 hours were spread apart
oh yeah, it
all
could take
through
all
the
day.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was demanding from that standpoint, and yet it was a lot of fun from that standpoint too. And you got a very good education. And after I left the studio and I went to, you know, college, for instance, I had no problem. I was way ahead of most everybody because of the education that I had received there.
You girls know one another.
Of course. Hello, Wilby.
The people I work with primarily in Shaggy Dog are, to me, now looking back so many years later, fantastic ensemble of people. I've never heard a bad word about her. Nobody's ever heard a bad word about her. She's very professional, worked very hard, never late, never anything.
She was just a cool lady. I mean, she was just a nice, down-to-earth person. And
She and I was maybe 5 years old at the time, I think. We became great friends, and we were friends. We still are. She was like an older sister to me. America thought for a long time you would go on a personal appearance or whatever, and they thought that my brother in real life was Tom. You enjoyed him so much from what he did, and you empathized with him so much that it just made everything come to life and work.
Come on, Wilby, let's take a walk.
Kevin Corcoran, who is a huge part of the picture. He has an innocence and a very beautiful honesty that is so hard to find in child actors. You know, you find it in children, but he brought it to the screen. That's how good an actor he was.
He was just this cute little guy.
He's from an Irish Catholic family.
Yeah.
It had about 100
Yeah, I was
members
going
in
to
it.
say, had 10 kids.
I remember he delighted me when I'd see him work. I thought, boy, that kid is really funny.
I just remember you in that crew cut and your little sweaters walking around.
Yeah.
All the Musketeers had crushes on Tim.
Before I came to Disney Studios, I knew that he was in a series on a thing called the Mickey Mouse Club, playing Spin on Spin and Marty, and I knew that was a big hit. And then I went and tested for the Hardy Boys, and I got a part of Joe Hardy, the two boy detectives, and Tim was Frank Hardy, and I got to know him, of course, on that. We've been friends throughout the years. We have very different interests. You know, he likes race cars, and I drive like a little old lady.
Roberta Shore, who we used to call Bobby, another great person.
I thought she was very good, and everybody liked her, and she was very much a lady.
We didn't really have any bad eggs. We really didn't.
We were just a bunch of kids. I mean, it was fun. We all got along great. I mean, I can't think of any time that I was working there that there was any dissension between any of the kids.
It is the screwiest mixture of reality, scary,
What are you doing here?
the werewolf legend to some degree, comedy, very good comedy, social commentary.
Later on, it had the dubious distinction of being the first black and white movie to be colorized for television.
It's like Casablanca. It's a classic. It's a movie that you can, I can show to my grandchildren. My grandchildren can show to their,
The Shaggy Dog was the top grossing motion picture in 1959. It outgrossed Ben-Hur. It outgrossed everything else. It ran at Grauman's Chinese for months. And it was a little low budget, relatively low budget, black and white movie.
Now let's go.